1978. I'm 22 years old. I live in South India, and I am an avid reader of Ms. magazine. In one of the issues in 1978, Gloria Steinem wrote a column that taught me about humor, that humor can be a powerful way to lay bare that which is fully visible right in front of us and yet completely hidden from our conscious awareness. And the essay that she wrote, that I laughed out loud reading, was titled, "If Men Could Menstruate." And she asked us to consider in this essay the simple question: what would happen if magically, suddenly, men could menstruate and women could not? Quite simply, and apropos to today's word of the day, menstruation would become, she said, the object of admiration. Okay? Men would brag about how long and how many pints, right? Sanitary supplies would be federally funded and free, of course. And for the status-conscious men, there would be John Wayne tampons and Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope pads. For the young people in this room, just replace these guys with Brad Pitt and whoever else you like. All right, so the question, more here. Guys would say, you know, I'm a 3-pad man, or I'm on the rag. Men would try to persuade women that intercourse is more pleasurable at that time of the month. And here was the important thing, that they would see this as an ability, like intelligence or something, right? A natural male prerogative, God-given. That's why it's called menstruation. If God intended otherwise, he would have called it womanstruation, duh. So she also told us, Gloria Steinem, that is, that women, not some, but maybe even many women, would participate in this charade themselves. Okay? That they might say things like, we don't want to pass the Equal Rights Amendment because if women are now equal to men, they're going to feel compelled to wound themselves every month in order to be just like men. And this is a message, however funnily she told it, that I want us to grasp today because our data show this. But the most important thing, the humor aside, the message that she gave me in that little column was something that I had never thought about before. I thought there were really inherently good things and inherently bad things. And what she said is, no, the characteristics of the powerful, whatever they may be, okay, are thought to be better than the characteristics of the powerless. And as if that were not enough of a message for me to deal with at 22, she then gave me this kicker. Logic has nothing to do with this, right? And I have spent the last many years, because I chose the path of science. And so, to me, this has been the deep question of the lack of logic of much of this, and how can we understand how our brains are wired that produce these kinds of errors in our judgments, and how can we demonstrate them with hard numbers by looking at the working of the human brain and be able to share these data with everybody, with police departments and judges and lawyers and healthcare providers and social workers and teachers and business people and so on. So there are many others before me who have led the path, and I'm going to give you a very quick little set of questions that you will answer by just raising your hands that will tell you a little bit about one particular kind of way in which all of our brains work. I'm going to ask you to do something very simple. Just tell me which of these two events takes more lives, and because they vary across the world, let's stick with the US for the first one. So in the United States, do more people die, for example, because they've been in a car accident or with abdominal cancer? Raise your hand if you think abdominal cancer. And don't raise your hand if you think car accidents. Okay, I can see how many. Now let's go to the whole world. There are many ways in which we die, and being eaten up by sharks is one such way, and being hit by a falling plane part. Believe me, these are events that do take lives. They're just very, very few of them, but one of them is much more common than the other. So you will tell me, raise your hand if you think the more frequent one is being hit by a falling plane part. Okay? And then let's come back to the US, because we have good data for the US. Death because of an opioid overdose or death by being in a car accident. Raise your hand if you think car accident. Okay. And this is just for fun. Which is more common? A CEO named David or a female CEO? Raise your hand if you think a CEO named David. It's nice that you got one of them right. Okay. So it turns out that if you wanted to get all of the others right, you should have raised your hand all 3 times, okay? Abdominal cancer takes more lives, plane parts, and car accidents, and very few of us get all of them right. And this is a bias. It's called an availability bias, and the best way to understand it is that there is a world out there where things are really happening. There are real frequencies, but our brain cannot represent them accurately. For us, what we believe depends on not only big things like education and our teachers and our parents, but what's happening in our neighborhood. What media are we consuming? What is it telling us? And so there is a disparity here between what actually goes on in the world and how our minds are representing it. And how we represent it is, as Gloria Steinem taught us, something that defies logic, because even when we're given good data, our brains don't always know what to do with it. So I'm going to give you a very quick little example of how much our world is affected by what we see, and this is a very sweet little experiment that a teacher of 8-year-olds did in the state of Illinois. On day 1, she asked her students to simply draw a picture of a scientist and write a little paragraph on, what do you think a scientist does? And that's the one that this one kid, 8 years old, a boy, drew on the left-hand side. Clearly, his jacket was not designed by Tory Burch, because you can look at that. So now the teacher takes these kids to Fermilab, a high-energy physics lab in their town. They meet with the scientists, they do some experiments, they come back to the lab, and then the next day the teacher says to them exactly the same thing. New sheet of paper, draw for me a picture of a scientist, and tell me, what do scientists do? And I want you to look at the shift after just one instance, okay? All of a sudden, it's the kind of thing Tory Burch might produce. Okay, so I'm going to show you 4 more instances. In each case, the picture on the left is what the kid drew first, and then the one on the right is the one that they drew after they had visited a physics lab and met with some scientists. This is my all-time favorite one. I don't know what's with these lab coats. I think there is a market here for Ms. Burch to design better lab coats. Okay, here's another one. Okay, here's a third one. Ooh, a different style jacket. Here's one that I think could be in her Winter of 2020 collection. And look what happens. Her arms become a little short, but with some ambition, she can pick up the beakers, okay? And then they say the most amazing things about this. My picture of a scientist is completely different than what it used to be. The scientists I saw didn't wear a lab coat. They used good vocabulary, and they spoke like they knew what they were talking about. Like, what did they think we did? But that's what Beth at age 8. So here I am to tell you what a single instance of exposure can do. Now, of course, I don't want you to leave here thinking that they thought scientists were men, and then they thought scientists are all women. There were 30 kids in this class. 26 of them drew a man as scientist on day 1, and 26 of them drew a man as scientist on day 2. 4 kids changed, okay? And the only thing I can see about them is that the 4 who shifted were girls, okay? So I want you to take away, it matters. Identity matters. We look at the same world, we take different things away, but exposures and what we see out there has a fundamental effect on what we can imagine, not only about the world, but perhaps even about ourselves. 20 years after I read the Steinem piece, it's 1998, and I am fortunate enough to be on the front lines of a science that is making a revolution. we are beginning to understand something called implicit bias. My colleagues and I give it that name. We don't think anybody outside our lab is going to care about it. And then we were stunned in 2016 when presidential candidates Trump and Clinton were asked by one of the interviewers, what are you going to do about implicit bias? And we were just stunned that people outside our little lab knew this word, right? So what I'm going to do now is to tell you, let's just see if we can, many of you have suffered through this test called the IAT, which tells you about the associations that are in your mind, but not all of you have taken the test. So are you ready to take one now? Okay, all right, so we're gonna get out of here. I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna have to do for this test, and it's very simple. You're gonna see words that will appear on a screen, in the middle of the screen, and your job is gonna be very simple. All you have to say is this name male or female? If it's a name like John or David, you will very quickly and rapidly and loudly, you will say left, because that's on the left. And if you see a name like Susan or Lori, you will say right, okay? Easy enough to do, but I want you to do this super fast. Faster than a second an item, okay? So you need to do it at about 700 milliseconds per item. You need to say this very fast, and to do it fast, you will make some mistakes. That's okay. Don't be too competitive for a few minutes, okay? Just do it as fast as you can, and if you do make a mistake, if you say left instead of right, or right instead of left, just pick up the next item and keep going. Don't become quiet because you made a mistake. So let's go. We'll see how well you do. Computer will give you a little score, and if that number is around 700, you're great. But if the number is bigger than 700, it means you're going too slow. So we'll see. All right, so left for anything male, a name that's male, right for female, go fast, go loud, go. Excellent. So this is a fantastic speed. Usually people are slow, and I have to get them to this stage, but you are already there. All right, now we're going to do categorizations, but of something different. There are words that represent these two worlds that we care about. We care about our professions and our careers. We care about our life at home. If you see a word like job, profession, desk, briefcase, boardroom, manager, leader, director, anything like that that belongs to the world of work, rapidly, just like you did, and making a few errors, it's okay, say left for career words or work-related words. And on the other side are home words, words like garden, house, home, cooking, kitchen, what else do we have? Oh, children, marriage, anything like that that belongs to the world of home, say right. So you got it? Left for career, right for home. Go fast, go loud. Let's see. Excellent. Woo. Look at what a little practice does to your brain. Okay. All right. And now you just put them together. If it's a male name or a career word, you will say left. If it's a female name or a house-related word, you will say right. Ready? Let's go. Excellent. Okay, so 688 is a tremendous score. Your brain should have taken a lot longer to do this than it did, so I want you to remember this number, 688, because it's going to represent half of your gender stereotype, and we are going to come back and compare it to a different number. Now that you've done this so well, we can skip over the next one and just move on. We're going to now just practice a little switch. Now you'll say left for female names and right for male names. Ah, the light bulb is going off. Okay, all right. So now do this one. This is really important. There are people over here who are just watching the others do it. I want you guys to do it really loudly. Okay, all right. So teachers have this sense of who's doing their homework. Okay, all right. So say left for a woman's name, say right for a man's name, loud, fast. This will be super easy. Go. Right, left, right, 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 left, right, left, 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 Fantastic. You are beating the speed of sound here. This is wonderful. And now for the last round, we'll just put these together. What's all the O and Ah for? Okay. Well, you know what I like about human beings is that they can tell before they're going to screw up that they're going to screw up. So let's see how pathetic you are in this round. Okay. Left for female or career, right for male or home. Go fast, go loud, go. Yeah. All right. So this test, so 600 and whatever it was, 88 or 668 compared to this is a massive statistically significant effect, okay? And it's not because you want to show this bias. I certainly show this bias, and I do not wish to show it. If you ask me what would you like to show, Mahzarin, I would say I wish to be neutral. I want to go just as fast when I have to associate male and career as I do when I have to associate female and career. And I cannot do that because whatever my conscious aspirations are, to be fair, to be egalitarian, to be able to represent people in all categories and imagine them equally, the thumbprint of the culture on my brain is not something I can deny, okay? Nor can I excuse it, right? So first of all, we have to say it's there, and then we have to ask ourselves, do I like having that bias? And I think most modern humans, not even the evolved humans who are sitting in this room, really believe that they do not wish to have this bias, and they do. And so we put these tests up in 1998 on a website, and we thought, why should we suffer alone, knowing how biased we are? Let's involve everybody in this. And we were unprepared for the response from you, okay? In the first month, we had thought we'd get 500 people in the first year. Remember, that's 1998. The web is not very well developed at all, and there's no such thing like an experiment sitting out there. So we put it there, and in the first month, we have 45,000 completed tests. You know, just word of mouth, no advertising. It went viral then, and it has remained viral for the last 21 years. We now have complete data from over 22 million people, many different countries, special sites for them, and so on. So there's a lot of data that I can tell you about, or that we've accumulated, that can teach you about this thing called implicit bias, that many of us have it, and I'll just give you the numbers. 75% of men in the world show this bias, okay, at least in the Western world, show the bias. It's easier for them to associate male with career and female with home, but a good 25% of men are not showing the bias. Who are they? Why does that happen? These are interesting questions for scientists to pose. If 75% of men show the bias, what percent of women do you think show it? 80%, okay? And here's my understanding of why women, like many of you, like me, who work outside the home, why is it that we show this bias? I think what this test is telling us is that it's actually not that hard for people like you and me to make the female career association. We can do that. We can even do that part faster than men because it is a part of our lived identity. What slows us down on this test, I think, is the other categorization. Male and home. Those two have not been put together in our minds. David and kitchen, no. That is not an association I'm able to make easily, okay? And I think that's where we have to learn about just how much women who work outside the home and who take their careers seriously, the fact that we are women who live in a culture where the association to home is so paramount. In some ways, I think this is healthy. I think it's great that women have these two identities, both with work and with home. We can talk a lot about the value to mental health, but we should also understand that that's where the issue might lie. So we know a great deal about these biases. I did not have a chance to tell you today about many other tests. Just like the test you took, I could have shown you faces of dark and light-skinned people, and I could have asked you to associate them with words like love and peace and joy, or bad things like devil and war and vomit or something awful like that. And the question is, how fast can we do that? Okay? And that's a difficult test to take. It was the most transformative day of my life to take that test and to know what was going on. So I'm going to run through this because I have only a minute, and to tell you that we are seeing something encouraging in one sense. Anti-gay bias at the implicit level in this test, not just what people say, but what they show, is dropping off. It's dropping off by 33%. Race bias and skin tone bias are also dropping, but at much smaller levels. And then there are other biases, like age bias or disability or body weight bias, that are not changing at all. So we need to know this, okay? I'm going to skip over this because in the interest of time, and just tell you that these changes that we are seeing in the data remind me of that very famous sentence that you know from Martin Luther King Jr. That came to him from Theodore Parker, a fierce abolitionist and a Unitarian minister from my neck of the woods in Boston. And the sentence, of course, that you know so well is that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And when I see data like this, and I see those little bends going in the direction of neutrality, I know we're heading there. And in spite of the depressing data in the bottom panel, I do want to tell you that I am optimistic. Why? Because nobody I know, no scientist I know who knew this way the brain thinks, ever thought that change would happen on the scale on which we're seeing it. So we know it is possible. And now the only question left for us, of course, is, do we have the ambition to do something about this? Okay? And I urge you to visit Outsmarting Human Minds. Thank you very much.